a buck in the club like, fuck that shit. Got my tone in the club like, fuck that shit.
Episode 21, The Hamster. What happened to the wedding? Have you ever seen any footage of an Albanian wedding? It's a big event. People will prepare for months in a semi-hectic anticipation, and the whole village or neighbourhood is invited to both the ceremony and at the party, and the party lasts for days. Actually, people take pride in having the longer everlasting party in their community. You see, not much is happening in these small villages, and something like a wedding is indeed a big deal. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, right. So Mark already gave her £200,000 for the party, but when we were waiting to board our plane, I heard that she was having a discussion with Mark, one of the first ones I remember, about money. Apparently it was not enough for the party she wanted, and she was talking about some additional expenses her family had to suffer, and that Mark had to pay more money. She was very nervous. Mark was sweating and didn't say a word. For sure it wasn't the fear of flying, but something else. Victor was not with us, and I really didn't understand why. During the few flight hours, I had seen 1. Her ordering more and more alcohol because apparently she needed it for the flight. Little did we know about her drinking habits. 2. Discussions with Mark who was supposed to provide more cash to her family. 3. Discussions with Mark who would have offered some money to her brothers, because. 4. Horrified passengers who were trying to avoid listening how she was talking to Mark. At one moment, someone asked him if he needed help to throw her out of the plane. Mark carried me together with a small leather bag, with a lock. Apparently something precious was in there, as he wasn't letting it out of sight. She had a huge female bag, a coat, an umbrella, a huge poshy hat in Brit style, plus a new tablet, mobile and laptop. Of course, there were discussions with the airport personnel who didn't want to let her take all of this into the plane. But Mark paid some extra, and there we were. At landing, Mark tried to give her a smile, but she was hysterical. Her brothers were waiting for us, and while they were all warmly greeting the arrival of their sister, only one of them, maybe the oldest, shook Mark's hand and in a weird accent said, "You must be Mark." Not a welcome, not a word about me. They had an old minivan that smelled of shit. The oldest brother attempted to bring the conversation up on how they needed a proper car there, asking Mark about car prices in London and repeating how everything was cheaper there. We stopped at a gas station, and after filling the gas tank, another brother came to Mark asking, "Para?" After a few para, she translated it for him. "Mark, sweetie, give him some money for the gas," and went back to talk with the other brother. Mark had no cash with him. Reluctantly, he reached for his briefcase, dialed the lock combination and opened it partially, placing his hand inside and outside in a second with a €100 note. The action didn't go unnoticed. The brother told the others something. She turned to Mark and asked, "Do you have the money in that bag?" Mark explained to her how he brought another 100k just in case, and that it was all that was left of his savings. The older brother reached for Mark and with his bloody accent said, "Money not safe with you, I'll keep it here," and took the briefcase. He was twice bigger than Mark, as the other brothers were as well. He let go, sure that actually that was supposed to be a favour. No need to worry about the bag, and he could finally relax a little. Upon arrival, after a few hours of bumpy roads, her parents were waiting outside, along with half of the village. Lots of people hugged Mark, kissing him on the cheeks and talking to him in Albanian. The older brother asked Mark to follow him and led him inside the house in what looked like a girl's room. "You, Gume, sleep, here," and left. Mark sat on the bed and told me, "Apparently it's the two of us again. I wonder where is she?" But the tradition requires that the bride doesn't stay with the soon-to-be husband, so he waited and waited. No, we waited and waited. He always plays with me. We imagined playing on the bed as if it were mountains, slopes, then played hide and seek. So much fun. Suddenly the door opened and the smile on Mark's face, expecting to finally see his love, quickly disappeared when the three brothers came in. The oldest was speaking on their behalf, while the other two seemed ready to get into a fist battle. You want our sister, our princess. You need to pay money for her." Mark mumbled about the 200k and the other 100 in the briefcase, but they wanted more. The conversation was very unpleasant, as they were sure Mark was hiding more money. They also wanted a new van. Then one of the other two brothers shouted at Mark. The oldest had to translate, but he did it with a grin. You will need to prove our sister is still a virgin before the wedding. And they left. Mark was terrified. Alone, far from home, no one to help, and he knew she wasn't a virgin. Eventually they did have sex on their first night. She wasn't a virgin back then either. How could she be now, only after a week since they met? Someone knocking at the door. Yes? And the door gently opened. A beautiful creature appeared, completely scared, trying not to be of much disturb to Mark. It was her sister, probably 18 or so, smiling at Mark and pointing at the closet. Mark understood she needed to take something of her own things and waved his hand like giving her permission to enter. She giggled and started taking things out of the wardrobe, looking for something. And then she saw me. Okay, maybe I'm not the most handsome hamster out there, but she was really scared and screamed like if someone was going to kill her. Hey, I'm not a rat. After a couple of hours, someone knocked at the door. Mark was already dressed up for the ceremony, freshen up and ready for the big step, but it was her older brother. He wasn't smiling. I heard him talking to Mark. What did you do to my little sister? Mark was speechless for a second, shook his head and replied, Nothing. She needed to take something from her closet and I just let her in. Then she saw my hamster and thought it was a mouse and was scared. I had to show her it as a hamster and very much domesticated. He wouldn't hurt anyone. The massive man was not happy about the answer. Was the door closed when she entered? Mark couldn't remember. I saw him trying to concentrate to recall the scene. Well, I think so. What's the problem? Well, you are lucky that you are marrying my other sister. My grandma downstairs is convinced that you touched my little sister, that you are a pervert. I think you are a good guy and believe your version. But pay attention. You don't close yourself in a room with an unmarried girl, even with my soon-married sister. I hope you didn't touch her before the marriage is official. That's very disrespectful. Of course, we expect to see the bedsheets hanging out tomorrow with the proof. I'll go now. The ceremony will start in a couple of hours, and you should get down and socialize with the rest of the family. And he went away. Mark was sweating. Of course he'd already had sex with his soon-to-be wife. How could they provide evidence of her virginity if she wasn't anymore? Not that he was the first one. She was actually quite experienced in bed. He mumbled and mumbled. Without noticing it, he was currently sitting on the bed with his head between his hands, shaking in search of a solution. Again some knocking. Yes? She entered instead. A full white dress that must have been of her mother or grandmother maybe, stained in yellow marks, made her look ridiculous. But Mark was speechless instead. He was really in love. Darling, before you say anything, this is bad luck. I'm not supposed to see you before the wedding, and your brother just explained to me that we shouldn't even be in the same room if the door is closed. Shut up. We have a bigger problem. I totally forgot about the blood thing. But my cousin gave me a solution. We could cut your rat's throat and stain the sheets with his blood. No one will be able to tell the difference. Isn't it genius? It was my turn to be paralyzed. How could she even come with the idea of killing me? I'm Mark's best friend, not a scapegoat, and I'm not going to die to prove that this bitch was a virgin instead than a well-known prostitute. Where is Victor? Mark pulled himself up from the bed. Under no circumstances is my hamster getting hurt by anyone, less killed. No, we need something else. A chicken, maybe? No, she answered. All the chickens are already slaughtered for the party. There isn't any animal left to sacrifice. Mark's phone vibrated. It was weird as absolutely no signal was available in this small, godforsaken village. Arrived at the port. We'll be there in 30 minutes with a chopper. Still okay with the plan? Get ready to run, my friend. V. Victor! He has arrived. He would know what to do. He will find a solution. I'm so relieved. My love, we will find a way, don't worry. What is important here is that we get married and then go back to our life together. I cannot resist longer here. She nodded and left. Mark hid me inside his empty money bag and told me not to worry, then went to mingle with the family.